there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And man, we have a great day today. Why? Because we have a doubleheader. If you listened earlier on today, I had the two captains of a boat that ships out and fishes in Bristol Bay, and they have a business called Thunder's Catch. They started this business, I don't know, I think she said 8 years ago, and now they supply their salmon products all over the U.S. And it was very awesome to hear their story. So if you're tuning into this one, go back and watch the previous one as well, because you'll get to hear just a wonderful story of two entrepreneurs who fish in Bristol Bay, who figured out a way to build a brand around some of the best salmon in the world. And they're just lovely people that you'll probably fall in love with and want to buy all their products. So go check it out. But without further ado, I have a friend of mine, Representative Kevin McCabe, is on. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Hey, John, how are you?
Doing awesome. So, Representative Kevin McCabe, for folks who have been living under a rock, share with folks, because there'll be people that are tuning in from other countries as well. So, share with us where is your district and what folks do you represent?
Sure. So, District 30 is Big Lake. So if you jump across the Knik Arm from Anchorage, it basically starts there with the exception of a little bit of Settlers Bay and goes from Big Lake, kind of follows the Parks Highway all the way up to Clear and Anderson, just on the other side of Anderson, actually about 3 miles is the edge of my district. So my district encompasses lots of interesting stuff. A lot of the Alaska Railroad is in my district. The West Susitna access is 100% in my district. I have about 18,500 people. We follow the district follows the Parks Highway all the way up there. So Denali, Healy, Cantwell, Big Lake, of course, Houston, Willow. Those are all in my district, and great bunch of folks, pretty varied, fairly conservative, and it's a great part of Alaska. I love it.
Probably very independent, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we're it's very hard to door knock in my district because you drive a mile down a driveway and then there's a sign on the fence that says no trespassing. Darn it, another one.
So we got the session coming up. You're going to be in Juneau before you know it, and it'll be an interesting session. What are you excited about for 2024? Anything in the mix that we should know about that's going to, be a pressing issue for you and the folks you represent?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. So HB3, of course, is the gold and silver bill that I have working. It's in the Senate right now. That's the one that allows gold and silver to be used as legal tender. When I first started it, there were maybe 4 states that had done it. Now there's close to 20 states that are looking at the 10th Amendment and allowing gold and silver to be used as legal tender, which is a constitutional thing for states. We can't coin our own money, but we can use gold and silver. So working pretty hard on that, and that's going to be a big focus. And then also Port McKenzie is a big focus. I want Port McKenzie done. I want the rail spur done from Port McKenzie to the railroad, and we're working pretty hard on that. On the 20th, we have a House Transportation Committee meeting at the Anchorage LIO. Everyone's invited, and the railroad is coming in. They're going to present some new cost estimates. Hopefully they'll be done by then, and we're going to have some questions for them and probably take a little bit of public testimony and that sort of stuff. So I'm really excited about that. Some of the senators will be there, although I don't think it will be the full-blown Senate Transportation Committee, and there will be a few other random legislators there asking questions and that sort of thing. So I'm hugely excited about Port McKenzie, the potential that it has to help South Central and to help the Mat-Su and even Fairbanks develop our resources, transport our resources, and the redundancy it provides for the port of Anchorage are fabulous. And now is the time.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about this gold bill, because I think it's fascinating. I really hope that it gets passed this year. I mean, I think that would just be phenomenal. For folks that are hearing this for the first time, walk us through what that would look like, because, we turn on the news, inflation, what's the dollar, the dollar bill is not really worth as much as it was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's kind of dwindling. It's becoming where it used to be like, one of the main, if not the main currency. It's definitely moving down on the list. So what would this gold and silver bill do for folks in Alaska?
Well, let's preface that by saying, in the early days of our country, you could buy the finest suit in the country for 1 ounce of gold, right? And right now, you can buy the finest suit in the country for 1 ounce of gold. So what I'm telling you is, gold holds its value, and the greenbacks, the dollar bills, unfortunately, fiat currency don't. They're continually being deflated because every politician in Washington, every president, doesn't matter what your flavor is.
You're spending.
You're spending money, and so we have to print the money to spend, right? So that's what inflation is essentially. So gold and silver bill will do a couple things. It will allow you to spend gold at a merchant if the merchant decides to accept it. It's not mandatory. And it will allow you to buy a thing called goldbacks, which is what we call specie. And it's a manufactured, it's gold in a bill. So the $1 goldback, say from Utah, has 1/1000th of a troy ounce of gold in it, actually in the bill.
Wow.
And you can buy that for about $4. So if you don't want to try to save up your money and buy a 1 ounce gold piece for $2,000, maybe that'll take you 6 months. And in the process, the inflation brings the price of gold up and your money down, right? You can slowly buy goldbacks if you would like, and then you can use those as legal tender in the state. And what it does is kind of relieves the tax burden. So right now, in Wasilla, if you buy a gold coin at $300 and you sell it for $1,000 6 months later, you're supposed to pay a tax on that. And this would relieve that tax, because you don't get taxed on a $50 bill when you spend it, but you would be expected to pay a tax on a numismatic or a collectible piece of gold. This sort of removes the collectible aspect and actually makes it currency.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been so much fun just learning about this. I've been so many places, the soundmoney.com.
So what's the pushback from people that are in the Senate or the House that don't like this bill? I can't imagine many people not liking it. It's just an alternative method that kind of safeguards assets here in Alaska.
Sure.
What's the pushback that they have?
The pushback is the banks. How's it going to affect the bank? My answer is probably not what they want to hear. It's like, well, you don't need a bank. Yeah. But well, what about the bank? Well, you don't need a bank. It's gold. You just keep it in your safe and spend it when you want. You don't have to run it through a bank. You don't have to keep it in a bank. We keep money in banks essentially, so we don't have to keep it in our mattress. And because the banks pay a little bit of interest, but the interest that the banks pay is not near what we lose in inflation. So you don't lose this by just keeping it in your safe.
What do you think the chances of it passing this year are? 50-50? What would you give it?
Hopefully better than that. There's a couple of senators that are very interested in it. Senator Bishop has his own gold mine, and so he's very up to speed on gold and silver, and I'm sure he watches it probably more so than I do. I'm sure he watches the spot price of gold and that sort of thing. Senator Olson has a gold mine in his district, so I'm very hopeful that we can get this thing through. There might even be some amendments, such as establishing a state repository for gold. So if you own a gold mine and you want to pay your royalties in gold, you just pay it to the state, and then they keep it in the basement of the PFD Corporation or somewhere, and then the state that's a very interesting. Texas is getting ready to do that right now, and it's a very interesting amendment. It would be. I would be very interested in it. So it's kind of grown some legs, and I like it.
That's exciting. So you and I were talking before we went on here that you just recently went to a conference, Wall Builders. Tell folks, there's tons of elected officials that went to this thing. Tell folks what it was and what your experience was.
Sure. So I was down there with Senator Shower, and there was 300-ish people there, 200 legislators from 23 different states. David and Tim Barton. David is the father, and Tim is his son. Have the largest collection of original documents surrounding the founding of our nation in the country. Wow. It's probably worth millions. I mean, you're holding an original document in your hand from at their museum in Glenn Beck's American American Journey experience, holding a original document like they have the original Thomas Jefferson draft of the Constitution, which is just amazing to hold and look at it. Yeah, and to learn the history, Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote that. At 33 years old, I was still, into motors and fast cars and, airplanes. And here's this guy writing this kind of document that has survived for 240 years. So just an amazing place. Wall Builders Conference, Congressman Loudermilk was there and spoke. Ryan, I think his name was Ryan West, the Oklahoma, very controversial Oklahoma superintendent of schools, was there. I can't. The last name might be wrong, but very, very good discussion on schools and school choice and all of the wokeism that's infesting schools. That's not happening in Oklahoma. They just absolutely said, sorry, we're done with that.
Not happening here.
yeah. So very, very good. Let's see who else spoke. Glenn Beck, of course, was there for an hour and a half and spoke about the Israel. If you haven't heard his speech in Israel in 2011, it's almost prophetic. I went back and listened to it after he mentioned it. It's 14, 15 minutes, but it's like, holy cow, here this is, a dozen years before, and he's sort of predicting that this is going to happen. So had a rabbi that's actually in Jerusalem right now talk to us about, current events and what's going on and that sort of stuff. So really, really interesting. It was 3 days and lots of great discussion. Ranked choice voting. Of course, all of the states are facing the ranked choice voting question, and they all wanted to know, hey, we heard Alaska likes this. And we were like, yeah, not so much. So good to be able to pass that along and talk to the other states and other state legislators. There was some discussion about gold and silver. There was a big discussion on that and why we don't want central bank digital currency, that sort of thing. So just wildly varied topics from anywhere from our kids and education all the way up to currency and current events. And so it was really good. I'm excited. Came back refreshed and ready to go. So Senator Shower as well. He's all over it. So
nice. That's awesome. So recently there's been some scuttlebutt in your district regarding a potential road, appropriation that happened years back. And I would kind of categorize it as just political drama that's happening behind the scenes. But let's hear your side of the story. Let's set the record straight. What are your thoughts on some of this? Tell folks a little bit of the background so they can hear, of the rumblings that oftentimes opponents do to knock people off of their pedestal so that the other team can win.
Sure. So, there is a legislative thing that happens every single year, and it's called reappropriation. So when the legislature appropriates money to a borough or grants money to a borough for a project, and in this case, I'll get to it, but it was granted to the Matsu Borough to buy rights of way on a Puritan Parkway in the event that they had to put a road from Port McKenzie through Big Lake essentially. Anyways, when the legislature appropriates that money, it has a finite life. So you have to spend the money, borough, within 5 years. As you come up on the life, or after the project's done, if there is money left over that hasn't been spent or wasn't, or they overestimated what it would cost, now there's this money sitting in this pot that actually has been appropriated to the borough for their use. So the borough has a choice. They can let it go back to the state, to the general fund, or they can contact their representatives, me or Senator Wilson at the time, and say, hey, what do you want to do with this money? It's coming up to an expiration date, and we think we can use it better. So there was $180,000, and it must have been 3 years ago. So it was my very first year. I was a freshman. There was $180,000 that was to be spent on buying rights of way in Purinton Parkway, and it was coming up to expire. And Chris Kirka and I got together with Senator Wilson, and we decided that the borough was looking for money to help with Big Lake Road and the maintenance of Big Lake Road, and the upgrade of Big Lake Road, even though it's a state road. So we got together with the borough, and it was decided that we would do this reappropriation thing. And so we did all that. And of course, it has to go through the House, passed by the House, has to go through the Senate, passed by the Senate. It's the borough has to have their fingers in it, and they essentially take it and do what they want with it, So anyways, so this there's a guy that's not very friendly to me, that has suddenly it's become $200,000, and he was using it to beat up on Moki 2, who was running for assembly. And he said, well, Moki 2 and McCabe redirected this money like I have the ability to do that by myself. And it's just, the problem is nobody takes the time to call me and say, hey, what's the story on this? And nobody really knows about the reappropriation thing. So, I'll probably put something in one of my newsletters about how reappropriations work, because it's important. We want to keep the money in the district. And if they get if they run a little bit over, it's really meaningless in the general fund. $180,000 goes into the general fund that gets sucked up immediately, but it is significant to the borough. So this guy, we reappropriated money from a paving project on Echo Lake Road. In fact, he wrote an op-ed in the Frontiersman about it. We redirected this money, he says, from a paving project to work on the road that I live on, which is crazy. If you've ever seen the road I live on, you know that it definitely needs work. And in 6 weeks in the summer, or during breakup, you can't hardly drive on the thing. But I'd love to get it paved, but it's not going to happen in my lifetime. No.
Yeah, in our borough, in the Kenai Peninsula borough, I think 98% of the roads that the borough has are not paved, and
right.
They don't want to pave them because it's it's oftentimes more maintenance, long term than a dirt road.
Well, in Kenai also, this stemmed from a conversation that Moki and I kind of had at a Big Lake Community Council meeting, Moki 2 and I, and the discussion was everybody in the borough deserves a passable road before we start paving all the roads. Yeah. And Moki and I agree that, like you say, a good gravel road is often better. It lets the moisture sublimate out. The permafrost doesn't cause pavement heaves and all that kind of stuff. But so that conversation turned into, well, we're going to, McCabe and 2 are taking pavement away from this poor lady on the end of Echo Lake Road. And it just blew up into this big thing that it really, really wasn't, So anyways, the Kenai Peninsula Borough does it right. They make sure everybody's got passable roads and nice gravel, graded roads. And
so if somebody's got a question about this specifically, how do they get in touch with you? Because I think your position is, let's set the record straight. Whatever kind of rumor mills are out there are happening are just not true. And so you're going to have folks listening into this where like, oh, I want to follow up with Representative McCabe. How can they reach your office or you? What's the easiest way?
Sure. Well, they can call my office, and I never call there, so I don't have the phone number. But they can call my cell phone. I mean, my cell phone's been the same number forever. It's 907-229-3721, or they can email me. So I'm I'm available. My chief of staff is available. We handle stuff daily.
Yeah.
If you call my office, likely you will get her and Angie, and she will, she'll pass it on to me, or she'll deal with it. Lots of times she just deals with the DOT or the. But if they have questions about this or any other um, accusations that have sort of been leveled at myself, and I'm happy to talk them through that. It's unfortunate that our country seems to live and die on sound bites anymore. Nobody spends the time to actually investigate what's it's just like there's some ordinances right now in the borough. If you actually read the ordinance would be good for the borough, but they wanted to beat up on it's a setback ordinance from lakes,
Yep.
but they wanted to beat up on the conservative assembly people. So they just put this soundbite out there. Oh, these guys are going to benefit from this. Well, no, there's 700 people that would actually benefit from it, because now they don't have to move their houses. So it bears some critical thinking, and as Americans, we've gotten away from that in the last couple of decades. We want to do something right away. We want to have the knowledge right away. We just don't want to spend the time to actually read. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of those that I know about. So
nice. Well, before we head out here, any last minute thoughts on this coming session, or final words for folks in your area that are looking forward to having hopefully another let's have a successful session with the Speaker Tilton there at the helm.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I'm looking forward to I'm actually going down to Saskatchewan, Canada, to talk to the Pacific Northwest Economic Region folks. I'll be giving a speech there about Port Mackenzie and the rail spur, and looking forward to pressing that forward and seeing how that works, and hopefully we can get that done. I think it would be a huge economic boom. So any pressure that anybody can apply with Senator Sullivan, Senator Murkowski, Representative Peltola, those are helpful. The Biden administration loves rail. Now's the nexus. Now's the time to do it. So that's a big focus of mine. I've been out to Port Mackenzie several times in the last couple months, and very excited. We're poised for greatness right there. So hopefully we can get that through. So I'm excited to see that go through. The gold and silver bill, of course, and I have a few other pieces of legislation that are working that would be it would be great to see those move somehow.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you joining us, Representative Kevin McCabe, and we wish you nothing but success in the 2024 legislative session. I'm sure you'll be on again. I think you've been on 3 or 4 times now, so you're one of a fan favorite here at Must Read Alaska. So for folks listening, watching, and reading Must Read Alaska, and you like what you hear, you like what you read, you want to help keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska, go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right hand side, there's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. Recently, a big publication put out the top 15 podcasts for podcasts that were about Alaska or in Alaska, and we got number 2, which is very exciting. We beat out every other news organization in Alaska. So I want to thank our listeners on this show for helping make that happen. Until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska.